Greetings, it's Iain from RTO here. Welcome to Marathon Wednesday, where we take on the big ones. And today we have got a viewer's request, and it's a band that I really enjoy listening to. And they are a British neo-progressive rock band called IQ. Now, they've been around since 1981. And they were put together by two chaps called Mike Holmes and Martin Orford. They've never really had commercial success, but they have got a loyal following, me being one of them, and the other person I know at least one other person, and it's great that it's Scott from the Prog Corner in America. He's a huge IQ fan. And we are going to be doing something on IQ as a joint project sometime in the near future. So go and check out Scott's channel anyway, because it's a pretty cool channel if you love your prog. So going back to IQ, they've had a few lineup changes. And at the moment, the band is the original band minus Martin. So they've all sort of come and gone and come back together. They've released, now there's a thing here, 11 albums and 2 EPs. Or so, because I am including the EP, the first EP as well in this. So we've got 13 to look at, hence why I've made it a marathon, so we can talk about all their music. So we'll get cracking. So coming in at number 13, we have from 1998 7 Stories into 98, and it's basically a re-recorded version of the original demo. Now, playing on here, we have lead vocals Peter Nichols, Mike Holmes is on the guitars, Martin Orford on keyboards, John Jowett on bass, and Paul Cork. So, first track on this is the same running order, is capital letters and in brackets in Surgical Spiritland. It does sound they've improved on it, the whole thing, but I've got this thing, why mend something that isn't broke. Then we have About Late 5. It's been altered too much. We'll talk about that when we get to the actual EP. And then we get Intelligence Quotient. This is not too bad. You got them lovely Mike Holmes tones, and Martin's keyboards are just fantastic on this. I think this is one track that has actually benefited from a redo. It really is good. Then we get For Christ's Sake. As much as I like this version, I don't think it isn't a patch on the original for me. Then we get Barbell Is In. Not a great fan of this version. The guitar solo is awesome as ever from Mike Holmes, but it just doesn't seem right. Then we get Fascination. It's been enhanced a little bit, it's okay. For the Taking, certainly the better version of this song, I think. I actually like this version. And then we got It All Stops Here. Again, another song that did actually benefit from a remix. I love both, but this sort of is the definitive version. And then we get a track that I've never can pronounce it. I think it's El Coco or L-O-Co Bella Nietzsche. Again, I prefer this version just a little bit better than the original. Yeah, I think some tracks did benefit from a remake. but we'll talk about this album a little bit. But the last track is pretty good. So I shall give that one an RTO ranking at 5 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 12, we go from 1989, Are You Sitting Comfortably? So, got a different lead singer on here, this one. We've got Paul Manel joining Mike Holmes, Martin Orford. We've got Tim Estow on bass and Paul Cook on drums. Noel McCullough doing backing vocals. First track on here is War Heroes, my favourite track on this album. Paul's got a great vocal on this. Lovely guitar tones as usual by Mike Holmes. He's playing a synth guitar as well, which actually adds to it. Really good track. I like that one. Drive On. A little bit poppy for me. They sort of changed the sound for this. I think they were trying to look for some commercial success, but it didn't suit them, this track. I don't like the arrangement on this. It's not one of my favourite tracks. Then we get this very short thing called Nostalgia. It's got some lovely eerie Martin keyboards on it. You know, you can tell it's IQ. It's pretty good. Falling Apart at the Seams. Some nice guitar work here from Mike. And of course Martin's absolutely fab on the keyboards. Sold on You, probably one of the worst tracks in my opinion that IQ ever recorded. It just doesn't fit. They were trying so hard to hit the big time, and that just didn't work. Through My Fingers, it just doesn't quite sound like IQ to me. I do find it a little bit weird. Then we get Wernish. Very Arena sounding. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, because obviously John Jowett did come from Arena and was in IQ as well. Yeah, it's not a bad track. I don't mind that one. And the last track, Nothing at All. I love the keyboards from Martin on that one. It isn't a bad album, really. It's just they were trying to go for some commercial success, I think, and some of it worked and some of it didn't, but it's still quite an enjoyable album, so I'm going to give that one an RTO ranking of 6 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 11, this one's the third album from 1987. And it's called Nomzamo, and it goes on the book as P.L. Manel in this one. Mike Holmes, Tim Estow, Martin Orford, Paul Cook. They've got additional musicians. Mickey Groom on backing vocals, Ray Careless on saxophone, Jules O'Kine does some vocals on Colour Flow. First track on here is No Love Lost. This is great track. Starts off some lovely keyboards from Martin. Paul Cook's drumming comes in. Pretty cool, and it's an awesome vocal from Paul. I love that track. Promises as the years go by. Very catchy, but I don't like the backing vocals on that one. They're a bit cheesy. Nomzamo. Great track. Lovely keyboards on this. Really proggy and wonderfully good. Still Life, a bit of a ballad type things here going on. Paul's vocals good. Martin keyboards is great. We have a lovely bit of saxophone on it as well, which isn't too bad. Very nice. Passing Strangers, bit poppy in places, but you can give them that. It's got a great guitar solo from Mike on it though. Human Nature, brilliant track this is. It's a bit of an epic. It's got that sort of proper Neo-Prog sound to it. arena or anything that John Mitchell puts his name down on. It's got that vibe to it. It's really good. Screaming, probably the track on the album. Common Ground, the best track on the album. Mike's guitar is just fantastic on this. And Martin, as ever, them keyboards are just amazing on here. Absolutely. Them little runs and swirls. It's just a fantastic track. It's alright, my thing's just gone a bit silly. There we go, found it. And the last, sorry about that, folks. And the last track is Cover Flow. It's okay. That's all I'll say about that. Definitely a mixed bag one. It's still got some sort of poppy sound to it, but I do put this album on quite a lot. So I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 10, we have the original demo that was released on cassette. Yes. I never got it on cassette. But I've got a recording of it, and you can tell it's from the cassette. And it's 7 Stories into 8 that was released in 1982. So it's Peter Nichols on lead vocals, Martin Orford on the keyboards, Mike Holmes on the guitars, Mark Rideout plays drums on this, on 3 of the tracks, and the rest are done by Paul Cook. The first one is capital letters, and for some reason I prefer this version. I think it's because it's raw, and it's just, it feels like someone's pushed down the record button and ran to play their instrument. It's quite quirky, and I've got a lot of nostalgia for that one. About Lake 5 is next. There's just something about Martin's keyboards on this. At the time of this, Mark Kelly was forging forwards with Marillion. These two bands are very, very similar in their early days. So I like that track. It's very, very 1980s Neo-Prog. Very, very good track. Intelligence Quotient. I do like this, but when they remixed it, it did give it an extra zing. For Christ's sakes, on here, it's the drumming is much better on this. Paul Cook's, I think this is one that Paul Cook drums on. Let's have a look. Or is it Mark Rideout? No, this is Mark Rideout. It's really, really good. I do like that track. Barbell is in. This sounds terrible with a drum machine. That's why I prefer the remix. They use the drummer. It just sounds a bit, yeah. Fascinations. Sometimes when you hear this, it just so sounds Script for a Jester's Tear sort of thing, or a bit of Peter Gabriel. It's okay. I like it. I like that. This is the origins of Neo-Prog, so it's pretty good. For the taking, as I spoke, when I liked it better for when it's remixed. This is a little shallow. It all stops here. Again, I think the remix was certainly better. Okay, although this version is very raw, I still prefer listening to this with all its warts and all that. I just think it's quite nostalgic to listen to where Neo-Prog really all started back in them hazy days of the early 80s. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7.5. Okay, then coming in at number 9, we have the first official debut album from 1983, and it's Tales from the Lush Attic. We put this one up against Script for Us just as Tear, remember, in a debut battle. It's Peter on the vocals, Mike, Martin, Tim on the bass, Paul on the drums. First track here, The Last Human Getaway. As I said when I did this time, very adventurous track to put on your first debut album, a 19-minute epic. But it is very good. It's got some sort of Genesis in here. Peter Nichols, it's got that voice that sounds very Peter Gabriel. Some great guitar work from Mike. It's a pretty good track. Good opener. Through the Corridors, it's a very short piece. Very Genesis again, but there's nothing wrong with that at all. Then we get my favourite track on here, and it's called Awake and Nervous. It's one of my favourite tracks by the band, actually. Martin's keyboard work on this is just terrific. Swirly sounds and tones. You've got the lovely bits of guitar through it. It's a great little track. Then we have My Baby Treats Me Right, which is just a piano piece from Martin. Quite good. The Enemy Smacks. Love the start of this. Keyboards. It's so much Fountain of Samoses, but who cares? It's just great sounding prog. And that was the last track. It's a very good debut album. It came out roughly the same time as Script. Unfortunately, this one sort of didn't hit the mark. It's a shame, because I think this is a great album, and I love it. I do love it. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 8, we have a double album that was released in 1997, and it's Subterranea. It's Peter is on the vocals on this. Mike and John Jowett is now on bass. Martin Orford and Paul Cook. First we get Overture. I love overtures. And this is the first time we get a great bass line from John Jowett. I love John Jowett's bass playing. Absolutely killer. You've got the swirls, the grandeur of Martin's keyboards and Mike's guitar. Absolutely killing opening track. Then Provider. This is a very short piece. It's very eerie. What a vocal from Peter. Very, very good. Then we get the title track, Subterranea. Love the start of it. It's all electronic and pulse, but it really works. Great riffs from Mike. Terrific track. Sleepless Incidental. Really like the start of this. It's got some nice little keyboard in the background from Martin. Mike's lovely acoustic guitars. The best bit though is that 3/4 of the way through, when the keyboard solo is from the magic fingers of Martin Orford. Absolutely terrific. Failsafe is next. One of my favourite tracks in this. At the beginning you get this real great guitar riff. Great bass line from John Jowett. Good stuff. Speak My Name. The keyboards of Martin on this, it just really is all about Martin. That is very, very good track. Tunnel Vision. Paul's drumming. He's a great drummer. He's very underrated drummer. Like all these musicians in this band are, they are very underrated musicians that create some great music. Then we get my favourite track on here. It's Infernal Chorus. Peter's vocal is fantastic on this. I love how his voice changes within the line. The drumming from Paul again really adds to it. Then we have this very short, eerie tune called King of Fools. This is really scary. The Sense Insanity. Vibraphone at the beginning. You know me and vibraphones. I really love that tone, and it really adds to that track. Then we get State of Mind, another short track. Great guitar work from Mike, and Martin's keyboard swells just add to the atmosphere. Then we move on to disc 2, and Laid Low. Again, it's just Martin's piano work on this is lovely. Little bits of delicate guitar work from Mike as well. Breathtaker, another stunning track. 6 minutes of pure magic. The guitar solo from Mike is absolutely fantastic. Capricorn, some interesting arrangement. This is some nice gentle stuff. It's really one of the surprise tracks on this album. The Other Side, another short song. Great vocal from Peter. Got a wonderful tone on this. Unsolid Ground, my favourite bit of this is that great vocal from Peter and this really strong bass line from John. Somewhere in Time comes next. The Martin's keyboard arrangements in this is terrific, and it starts off again with a lovely bass from John. High Waters, there's so many of these nice lush keyboard runs and piano from Martin on that. Then we have The Narrow Margin, which is an epic 20 minutes. Different tones of vocal from Peter, and Paul's drumming, it's sort of gentle, and then he picks up the beat and he drives the song along with John's bass line. They sort of control this song, that engine room, some lovely swirls, and it just builds up, and like all good prog tracks, it fades away into the distance. I thought this was IQ coming back to form. The previous two albums were not bad, but they weren't classics. This is more like it. This is a great album. I love listening to this album, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.2. Okay, then coming in at number 7, we have the second album released in June 1985, and it's called The Wake. The band was Paul McNichols, Mike Holmes, Tim Astu, Martin Orford and Paul Cook. First track on here is called The Outer Limits. Tim's bass line and that spicy sort of guitars, I call it, keyboard from Martin, really drags you in straight away. But it's Mike's guitar work as ever is brilliant. There's some harpsichord on here as well. I just love this track. Absolutely solid. Then we have the title track, The Wake, and a really good track. I love this whippy sounder you get with it. Eerie, great riffs. Then we get the Magic Roundabout. Nothing to do with Dougal and Florence. But this Peter's vocal delivery on this is absolutely killer. He is a fine vocalist. I love that track. Corners. Now, this is a track that really doesn't fit on this album. I don't know if it's I don't know if I could call it a filler or it's just an oddment. Nothing like the first 3 tracks. Yeah, it's alright, but it just doesn't fit in with what's been going on. Widow's Peak. Now this is one of my favourite tracks by QI ever. It's that eerie keyboard, and the guitar work is so Steve Hackett. It's just an amazing piece of music. I'm not going to tell you if it's my favourite or not, because that'll spoil the thing I'm going to do with Scott. So I'm just going to save some of my favourites. So then we get the 1000 Days, solid track, some nice guitar tones on it. Headlong, the last track. Tim's bass line just dominates this track. Everyone else sort of hooks onto that great bass line. Some lovely keyboard bits from Martin as ever. A really good album. After the debut was good, but they really took it to another level. The production's a lot better, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.5. Okay, number 6. This is 2019's Resistance. It's Peter. This is the album that hasn't got Martin on it. We've got Peter Nichols, Michael Holmes. Keyboards are now done by Neil Durant. Tim Estell's on the bass and Paul Cook. First track, it's called A Missile. Peter's vocals, they just sound as good as they did on day one. I like this track, absolutely killer. Rise, a great bass line from Tim. Now you've got Neil Durant doing these keyboards, and he's doing a fine job in the band. I really like this track. Stay Down, Neil's keyboards on this are pretty good. There's some choral in it, there's some eeriness. Very good. Then we get a track now, I've got to see if I can pronounce this right. Alam Pandrea. It's a great track. Mixed guitar work, great. Paul's drumming is just spot on again. Very, very good. Shallow Bay. We've got some real sultry piano from Neil on this. There's so much atmosphere. Very strong vocal from Peter as well. If anything, now this is the blip on it. It's got that Phil Collins Genesis sort of drum that I'm not keen on. It works on Phil Collins solo albums, but I just don't like it. Some lovely guitar on this, acoustic guitar from Mike. For Another Lifetime, the first of two epics on this album. It's just nice to see bands still doing these epics in 2019. It's got some accordion on it, daunting vocals, the bass gets heavier and heavier from Tim. Neil has a complete keyboard frenzy which works, and then it comes to this crescendo with a great guitar solo at the end from Mike. Absolutely brilliant. So this is a double album again, so CD2 opens up with another epic, The Great Spirit Way. That mystique start, and Paul brings the drums up. It starts it gentle and he just brings it up. Little stabs of guitar from Mike. Halfway through, Neil comes into the own at the keyboards. Very hard to replace Martin, but he's done a great job here. The grandeur of the keyboards is just another really strong track. Fire and Security, a wonderful bass line from Tim. Goes back to them early days, this track, but using 21st century technology. Perfect Space, another great track. Great drumming here from Paul. They've really toned in on this album. It's got lots of half beats from Paul. Very, very good. And then we get another epic. It's the third one on the album, and it's the best one. And it's called Fallout. I love the start of this, them shimmering cymbals. I love that sort of thing. The choral keyboards from Neil, the strong vocals from Peter, the mellotron comes in, some guitar work. It's 1972 done in 2019. What a track. This is a fantastic album. Bang up to date for them. 2019 was a good year. 3 15-minute tracks plus tracks on it. Shows that they're still relevant in prog, and I love playing this. It may be long, but I just love playing it. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.6. Well, I'm gabbling on here, but it's one fun. I love this band. Okay, coming in at number 5. This is the 11th album, released in 2014. The Road of Bones. So it's Peter Nichols, Mike Holmes, Neil Durant, Tim Estello and Paul Cook. First track, and this again has 2 discs. Get all these great tracks on. From the outside in, another good track. The bass, there's some bass pedals in this. I love bass pedals. Great guitar work from Mike. The title track, The Road of Bones. Again, Tim's bass lines are great. You know, they've been lucky to have John and Tim in the band, two great bass players, and I love this track. Without Walls, my favourite track, you get this sort of soft drum machine percussion sound, and they've used it as the extra layer. And great guitar solo from Mike, very Steve Hackett. You can think in the bass pedals really give it atmosphere. Ocean, a really nice gentle track. Neil's guitar, his keyboards is great. Great vocal from Peter on this, absolutely brilliant. Then we get this little mini epic called the Until the End, 12 minutes of just great music, a great bass line from Tim, some gentle little guitar work from Mike. Then on disc 2 we get Knucklehead. It's a gentle acoustic guitar, but then halfway through that Mellotron just pounces you, and the driving drumming from Paul as well just adds to it. Then we have 1312 Overture. Yes, it is a take on the 1812, but I just love tracks when they sort of interpret sort of classical music and bringing it in. It's just a great instrumental. I love this. Constellations, the drumming from Paul is outstanding. He is such an intricate drummer. I do like this track. Rise and Fall is next. One of the weaker tracks on here. It's a little too long. It doesn't seem to go anywhere. 10 Million Demons. Now this is quite catchy and it's a little bit commercial, but it works. That electronic bass sound actually works. It's just very different, but I do like it. Very quirky little track. And the last track on here is called Hardcore. Very weird start, but the eerie bass line really does send shivers down your spine. You've got some strings on here. The highlight of this is the acoustic guitar from Mike. Another great album, one of the new albums, and it's still fantastic. It's a shame this band never hit the big time, but I love this album, and I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.8. Okay then, coming in at number 4. This is so hard because these albums are just fantastic. I do love them all. So at number 4, from 1993, we have Ever. So this is Peter, Mike, Martin, John Jowett on the bass on this one, and Paul on the drums. First track, another bit of an epic called The Darkest Hour. Starts off with this sort of eerie bass line from John. Then Martin just keeps adding these little bits of keyboard into it. Just builds it into this mini epic. Great track to start with. Then we get Fading Senses. The gentle keyboards of Martin on this one. Peter's vocals just amazing. And then you get this lovely interaction between John and Martin. Bass and keyboards just having a bit of a fun there. It's really good. Then for Out of Nowhere, this is probably one of those first poppy sort of IQ tracks, but it's got a great bass line on it. It's okay, that one. Further Away, my favourite track on the album, another epic, 14 minutes. I love the start of this. That's really nice keyboard from Martin. Flows in, and then the vocals just come in at a wonderful pace from Peter. But the highlight for me is actually the keyboard that's slowed in the middle for Martin. I'm just a sucker for these keyboard solos. You know, Martin, Tony, Mark Kelly, they're all got that same sort of quirk to it. I just love this. You know, it's very sort of Tony Banks. It's just fantastic. That's why I love that track. It's just the keyboards. Leap of Faith, Mike's guitar solo is absolutely amazing, as ever. The keyboards sort of intertwine that keyboard guitar solo. I love how this band sort of create these sounds. It's a really good track. And the last track came down. Now this is one of my favourite Peter's vocals on this album. The drumming from Paul is just how he keeps this beat up. Fantastic. A very good album. This is where the last one where before they started trying to get that success and going a little bit poppy in places. But you know, like bands, I had that little blip and then they come back strong towards the end of the 90s. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 3, we have the first album of the new millennium from 2000, The Seventh House. Peter, Mike, Martin, John and Paul are your musicians, and Tony Wright comes in and does a little bit of saxophone. The first track on this one is The Wrong Side of Weird. It is weird. Martin's keyboards at the beginning are weird. I wonder if that's how they got the name. It's just, and then Mike comes in on his guitars. The shimmering cymbals again from Paul. Absolute belter to that track to start the album with this little epic. Erosion, a really good track. The highlight for me though is that bit in the middle. We got this gentle keyboard and then a riff from Mike that just takes you by surprise. Absolutely killer track. The Seventh House, the best track on this album. It's another of these 14-minute tracks. Martin's keyboards throughout this track are incredible. Different tones, different textures, delicate, aggressive. It's like Mike's guitar. It's very delicate. And then all of a sudden he throws in a curveball riff. But the thing that holds it together is Paul's drumming all the way through. Brilliant track. 0 Hour. The first 3 minutes of this are so eerie and atmospheric, and it just builds up. And this is where we get a saxophone, and it absolutely pulls this track. Absolutely brilliant. Shooting Angels, another solid track. You got this bit in the middle with saxophone and bass. Absolutely works. I just like that. Guiding Light, another nearly 10 minute track to end the album. Got some really nice piano work from Martin on this one, and then he puts in a lovely keyboard solo as well. And then Mick says, I'll put a great guitar solo down on this track, and you end up with a really strong track. A really good album, a comeback to start the new millennium. There isn't a bad track on this at all, really. It's just pure magic genius. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.3. Top 2, not much between these two. So number 2 is the 10th album, released in 2009, and it's Frequency. Peter, Michael, John Jowett. Got a different keyboardist on here, Mark Westworth, and a different drummer in Andy Edwards. So the first track is called Frequency. That starts off with talking about the dropping of the first atomic bomb radio, and then we got Mark Westworth on the keyboard. Starts off with some lovely keyboard work, and it's absolutely amazing track. Live support, this belongs to Mike Holmes. The guitar work, you just know that Steve Hackett's got to be one of his guitar heroes, because he sounds so much like, there's not much difference. You listen to his solo on here, and then you go and play something like the 4th or 5th or Dancing in the Moonlit Night, and they're very, very similar sort of tones and textures. Absolutely fantastic track. Then we get a track called Stronger Than Fiction. Very Genesis and Mellotron sound. Some great drumming here from Andy. Very, very good. One Fatal Mistake. It's quite commercial, but it actually works. It's quite quirky, and I've got nothing wrong with that. Roy Skies, the Mellotron on this is brilliant. Any track that gets that mellotron going, it's just fantastic. Fine vocal from Peter. John's bass line as well. You got that mixture of that great bass line and the mellotron. Some pretty choral keyboards as well. Really strong track. Then we get the Province, my favourite track on here. We start off with some gentle acoustic guitars that then taken over by these strong riffs. Bit of bass pedals thrown in there. You know, it's got all the elements of great prog. And I just loved that track. Then we get Closer. Now this is very, very Marillion towards the end of the late 80s. Sort of that sort of clutching at straws season end period. Great track. Very gentle guitars on this. I do like this. Another great album. You know, 2 new members on this one, and they play fantastically all the way through. I think there's some great vocals here from Peter. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.5. But my number 1 album, and it's been my number 1 album probably for a long time now. It's from 2004, and it's the brilliant Dark Matter. Very eerie album, but it's just fantastic musicianship. So we got Peter on here, we got Mike, we've got Martin, John Jowett and Paul Cook. First track, Sacred Sound. The ambience and the atmosphere to the start of this is just standing your hairs on the back of your neck stuff. But the middle bits of the back, you've got this bass line from John Jowett, and then the drums, a little sort of drum bass bit in the middle. Absolutely stunning. Red Dust Shadow, probably my favourite slow track by IQ. Some lovely gentle acoustic guitar from Mike. He builds up, and it's a great vocal performance from Peter. Absolutely stunning track. Then we get You Never Will. I love any track that starts off with ticking clocks. There's just something about it. And the bass line from John just adds in with them clocks, really gives it atmosphere. Then Martin comes in with some great keyboard layers, takes it to another level, but it's that eerie bass line that keeps echoing in and out. Absolutely terrific track. Born Brilliant, the great combination here of the bass and the keyboards. Again, it's the bass, it's the keyboards underneath the track that really add to it. Oh, brilliant. Then we get this epic called Harvest of Souls. Starts off with a little delicate piano from Martin, some stunning vocals on top of Peter, and then that's how the beginning of the track, it's just running, and then after about 6 minutes Martin comes in and changes the track to a different pace. Oh, just blows your head away how he does it. The guitar work, it's absolutely brilliant. Now, I call this IQ's Echoes, or their Grendel. It's just a great piece of music from this band. I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't want to spoil where I'm putting this in my favourite songs of IQ, but I just love this. As I said, it is their Grendel, their Echoes. It's just wonderful. That was the last track on the album. This album is a combination of all eras of IQ's music that have come together in one place. A lot of that original sound using modern technology. 52 minutes of just pure brilliance from one of the most underrated prog bands the UK has ever put out, without a doubt. They need more love than they get, so I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 9.6. So there we go, a bit of IQ. If you've never really heard this band, go and check them out. They are just a phenomenal band with a lot of history. So that's all for today, but I'll be back tomorrow where we've got another viewers pick battle of the debuts, and we got a really good one. It's one of those where the two main people play on each other's albums, and the albums came out within months of each other. One album is Pierre Milan's Gong and Downwind, and the other is Mike Oldfield's Platinum. This was suggested by Zeb. Very good choices, Zeb. Looking forward to that one. And tomorrow we're going to look at In the Camera's View, and we've got a classic one for you tomorrow. Features the brilliant AC/DC and probably some of the last footage of the great Bon Scott. So of course it's Let There Be Rock, AC/DC, recorded in Paris. Looking forward to that one as well. So have a great day, everyone, and don't forget tomorrow is also live stream as well. So have a great day. Bye bye for now. No explosions at the end of this one. Bye.